The peak period of summer 2025 is gradually entering a recession. Across the United States, coastal cities are often filled with tourists, restaurants are lit, and hotels are full of rooms. However, why is Florida still so deserted? The once busy streets, now only a few cars pass by in silence. Many houses, once the dream of millions of people, are now abandoned with for sale signs hanging in front of their doors. The once bustling beaches now look lonely, like a silent version of the Black Sea. Florida now resembles a jeweled moat shell, sparkling on the outside, but hollow on the inside. Why does the place that once held millions of people now make them quietly leave? And if a paradise can turn into a ghost town, how many other parts of America are facing the same fate? In today's video, we're going to dive into the unprecedented causes, consequences, and impacts in Florida, to see that the picture of American travel is not just the numbers and statistics, but the stories of people, communities, and even broken dreams. Summer 2025 in Florida passed slower than ever. But no one wants this summer to go so slowly, other than the children who are on summer vacation. No more bustling laughter on the beach. No more crowded scenes in the central neighborhoods where buildings and shops used to be bustling and now silent. Rental boards appear everywhere as if time had stopped. This contrasting picture compares to what residents and businesses here still envision a tourist picture. What was once a retirement paradise now has the look of a ghost town, where people are homeless seems to outnumber tourists. 41.2 million visitors still flock to Florida, a number that sounds positive, but the sharp decline in international arrivals, especially snowbirds, North American residents who come to Florida every winter, tell a story completely different. In the past, they weren't just short-term tourists. They rent long-term houses, go to supermarkets, play golf, visit clinics, and spend an average of $25,000 to $40,000 per winter, contributing directly to the local economy. But entering early 2025, more than 80% of Canadian visitors, the most loyal group, did not return. Flights from Toronto or Montreal are emptying of passengers, and businesses call areas like John's Pass no different from ghost towns. The consequences do not stop at the absence of tourists. Every snowbird that leaves means $40,000 disappears from Florida's economy. Some coastal cities and Gulf Coast tourist destinations reported revenue declines of about 30% compared to previous years. With the tourism industry generating more than $100 billion a year and more than 1 million direct and indirect jobs, this decline has a domino effect. Businesses have to cut staff. Thousands of people have lost jobs. Thousands of families lose their source of income to maintain their lives. The local economy, which was based on the pace of life of tourists, is now wobbly, bringing other professions to a standstill. What's scarier is that this withdrawal is more than just the number on the report. It evokes helplessness and anxiety. What was once a paradise worth living in, a symbol of comfortable old age and the American dream, is now strange, empty, and full of risks. Looking at deserted beaches, silent streets, and abandoned buildings, one feels the disintegration of the community, the disappointment of once believed values, and anxiety about the future. If even places that were once paradise gradually become empty, what will our generation pass on to our children and grandchildren, and what is a safe shore for past dreams? Behind the falling visitor numbers, the gloom on streets and empty beaches is a staggering paradox. Florida's once cheap and accessible retirement paradise is now a luxury that not everyone can stand it. Authorities give an easy-to-listen reason: Hurricane Helene. Economic difficulties caused tourist spending to decrease by about 30%, or some businesses have not yet reopened. But that is just the surface of the iceberg. The cost of living and traveling in Florida has increased at a rapid rate. Annual pass increased from $600 to about $950 per person. Rent a car for 2 weeks for nearly $900, double the previous $380 to $500. Universal Hotel charges an additional $30 per day for parking, even if you purchased an annual pass. One tourist frankly shared, "I think it's mainly Disney that makes things increase in price. Avoiding Disney is a bit cheaper, but still not cheap. Everything is swelling up quickly, except your wallet." On average, a couple who want to experience the most affordable places also have to spend more than $4,000 for a short trip. Many visitors now only dare to walk into Walmart to eat a few slices of bread or a few glasses of canned juice, as the entire travel budget has been spent on resort and service costs. Florida, once a cheap retirement place, has now become a luxury that not everyone can reach. But that's not the whole story. A growing number of international visitors, especially from Canada, admit they no longer feel welcome, and their withdrawal is a form of silent protest. A tourist from Canada shared, "We no longer feel welcome and respected. 77 million Americans voted for this, and this is what they get back from their decision." Not only tourists, local residents and businesses also feel abandoned. Real estate prices, rents, insurance costs, skyrocketing so that even middle-class people can no longer afford it. Taxes and daily living expenses, from food, gasoline to electricity and water, are also unusually high, creating an inevitable additional burden. The consequences of storms, floods, and natural disaster risks further aggravated the situation when a series of insurance companies withdrew from Florida. Many families are forced to pay premiums so high that they cannot maintain them or cannot afford insurance at all. As a result, they had to sell their homes and move, many returning to other states such as Tennessee, Carolinas, or Texas. Places that were once bustling are now becoming attractive and quiet, increasing the feeling that Florida is losing its inherent vitality. This is not just a story of loss of revenue or visitors, but also an emotional rupture, a mental trauma that promotions or tax incentives cannot patch up. Florida is slowly losing the lifebloods that have kept this sunny paradise image alive for decades. Can this place return to the way it was before? Or is the Florida dream just a memory in the memory of those who once called it paradise? Florida used to be a place where visitors and retirement residents felt dedicated care, from small restaurant meals to friendly hotel services. People who work in the service industry, waiters, hotel staff, housekeeping staff, are the obvious face of a retirement paradise. They not only provide services, but also create a feeling of closeness and familiarity, making the elderly or tourists from far away feel like returning home. But in the summer of 2025, that picture has changed. Many restaurants and hotels recorded severe staff shortages, causing service quality to decline. Meals were served slowly, rooms were not cleaned in time, and receptionists were confused by guests' questions. Experiences that visitors once took for granted have now become unstable, absent, and empty. Compared to 2010 to 2019, Florida service used to be almost perfect, with a high customer satisfaction rate and positive feedback from the snowbirds community. They know that when entering a hotel or restaurant, there will be familiar hands, friendly smiles, and agile service. Now, many travelers can't avoid the feeling of regret, reminding them of a Florida once filled with life and energy. The story is not just about customer experience. Workers, especially middle-aged and older employees who have been involved for a long time, also feel helpless in the face of the situation. Many people are forced to leave the industry due to high living costs, rising insurance costs, and income no longer enough to compensate for work pressure. As a result, the familiar hands disappeared, leading to a loss of quality and a sense of security for retired residents. The manpower shortage phenomenon also creates an empty loop. Services decline, experiences are poor, tourists and snowbirds leave, labor demand decreases, and finally, restaurants and hotels cut staff. Florida was once known as the paradise of aged care and high-quality travel, now faces the challenge of basic operations. Some businesses have begun testing alternatives, raising wages, providing employee accommodation support, or partnering with large service management companies to maintain quality. Brands like Marriott, Hilton, or Disney Resort are trying flexible HR programs that aim to retain key workers and enhance the visitor experience. This can be seen as a narrow door to stability again, but it is not enough to comprehensively resolve the long-term imbalance. Can Florida rediscover the familiar hands, friendly smiles, and sense of security that make up retirement paradise? Or will this be the image of a Florida that generations once loved only in memory? Florida was once known as the heart of America's tourism economy, where every restaurant, hotel, resort, and store contributes to a vibrant pace of life. Crowded coastal streets, bustling shopping malls, and parking lots around resorts are filled with laughter and footsteps from tourists from all over. But in the summer of 2025, that pace of life suddenly slowed down unusually, leaving empty streets, rental boards covering storefronts, and resorts so sparsely populated that many places had to temporarily close. Recent statistics from general survey sources show that tourism revenue in many coastal hotspots has dropped sharply, in some places down about 25 to 30% compared to previous years. As a result, thousands of employees directly and indirectly in the service industry face helplessness and instability. Cutting working hours, stagnating salaries and bonuses, or even losing their jobs. Businesses that once relied on a loyal influx of customers now struggle to survive. Hoteliers shared that a room that could once be filled by snowbirds is now empty, while the small restaurant, which serves intimate dinners for retired residents, had to close due to lack of guests and costs. Operating costs increased. This emptiness is not just a statistic, it is a feeling of loneliness that pervades the streets, which were once symbols of energy and prosperity. It is worth noting that the economic impact does not stop at declining revenues. The tourism industry brings with it a series of other services: transportation, shopping, healthcare, entertainment, all bearing the weight of the decline in visitors. If the store closes, labor loses its job, ancillary services are no longer running smoothly. Florida is experiencing a domino phenomenon where shortages in one link directly impact the entire economic value chain. Some large enterprises are looking to adapt. Marriott, Hilton, Disney Resort brands deploy long-term promotions, combining flexible services, incentives for domestic guests, and personnel support during low season. These are temporary but strategic solutions, helping to retain loyal customers and keep the economy running. However, with small businesses and less popular coastal communities, recovery is still a long and difficult road. If the economic backbone of a state can be shaken so quickly, will the families, businesses, and middle-class residents who built Florida still have faith in the future? Or will this be the image of a once brilliant paradise, now only in memory? Florida has been a symbol of retirement dreams and a tourist paradise where middle-class families can find peace, joy, and a comfortable life in the warm sunshine. But summer 2025 marked a silent turning point. Streets, beaches, and resorts were sparse, and the influx of migrants, both tourists and middle-class residents, seemed to be retreating day by day. The consequence is not only a lack of tourists, but also a long-term imbalance in the local community and economy. The decline in middle-class residents brings pressure on public infrastructure and services. Schools, clinics, and health services, which depend on a stable population, now face overcapacity but lack of revenue. Meanwhile, critical services such as public transportation, police, fire, and aged care are increasingly difficult to maintain effectively. Some areas even record human resource imbalances as employees leave or refuse to move to Florida because of high living costs and natural disaster risks. The economic consequences are also profound. Declining tourism revenues followed the closure of shops, restaurants, and hotels. Many families lose a steady source of revenue and are forced to sell their homes or move, creating a vicious cycle of emptiness. This mass withdrawal also affects real estate values and local tax income, putting infrastructure, education, and health funds under increasing pressure. Florida faces the risk of losing its long-term appeal, not only to visitors but also to potential residents, especially the retired generation looking for a safe and pleasant living environment. At the emotional level, this phenomenon evokes anxiety, helplessness, and emptiness. Middle-class people who once enjoyed Florida as a paradise now see the place they once trusted fade away. Old people with memories of crowded beaches, dazzling neighborhoods, and active communities now only see rental boards, deserted streets, and empty buildings. Belief in a stable life and cohesive community, what was once a vivid image of the American dream, is now being seriously tested. Several major brands are working hard to support. Marriott, Hilton, Disney Resort launch long-term promotions, create incentives for domestic visitors, and support personnel and small communities around the resorts. These are temporary but strategic measures, aimed at maintaining stability and retaining both customers and human resources, while reducing long-term negative impacts. If even a once vibrant retirement paradise can become empty, where will communities and the next generation find security, trust, and opportunity? Can Florida regain its inherent appeal, or is this the image of an American dream slowly drifting into memory? Florida, the retirement paradise once known as the where life is light and sunny, now faces clear warning signs. Deserted streets, sparse beaches, and struggling local businesses stand as symbols of the risk of imbalance between living costs, infrastructure, and community appeal. Summer 2025 saw many middle-class families leave, dragging snowbirds and international visitors back to, making Florida a modern ghost town where once vibrant life is now frozen. This phenomenon is not just Florida's own story. As the cost of living skyrockets, from real estate, rent, insurance to medical expenses and necessities, other communities in the United States could face the same risk without policies' appropriate support. States like Tennessee, the Carolinas, or Texas are seeing waves of people leaving Florida, leading to pressure on real estate, health services, and educational infrastructure in receiving localities. This is the key lesson. An attractive community in terms of cost and quality of life will retain residents and visitors. Otherwise, withdrawal will entail a domino effect. Florida also shows that opportunities always exist at risk. Many large businesses are making efforts to remain attractive and support the community. Famous resorts and brands such as Disney, Marriott, and Hilton deploy long-term incentive packages for snowbirds residents, rent discounts, services, and sightseeing tickets. These efforts are not only aimed at increasing immediate revenue, but also Florida's way of keeping the image of a livable paradise for the middle-class and elderly generation of residents. Another important aspect is community and empathy. Florida was once famous for its open community spaces, outdoor events, and social cohesion between long-time residents and retirees. Now, regaining these values requires rebuilding trust, creating a sense of welcome, and maintaining safety for all ages. Healthcare, insurance, and community service programs offered by major brands in partnership with the government could be an important step in relaunching the state's vibrancy. From an emotional perspective, Florida is a mirror for the whole of America. Emptiness mixed with hope, reflection on the past, and the opportunity to learn and adapt. Residents and elderly tourists feel regret, but there is still a light of hope if appropriate policies and measures are implemented. This is also a lesson that reminds other communities. Keeping a balance between cost of living, quality of life, and economic attractiveness is vital. Will other communities across the United States look to the Florida story as a warning to adjust costs, infrastructure, and services before emptiness appears? Or will this be a lesson where only those who experience it will fully feel the impact? Can Florida return to the bustle of the past? This question resonates in the minds of middle-class residents and travelers once attached to this sunny retirement paradise. Summer 2025, as beaches, resorts, and central streets become sparse and muted. It's not hard to see that Florida is at a historic crossroads. Skyrocketing living costs, skyrocketing housing and insurance prices, and the constant risk of natural disasters causing many middle-class families to leave. The phenomenon of migration not only created empty streets, but also had a ripple effect on other communities in the United States. As retiring residents turn away, other cities, from Tennessee, Carolinas to Texas, receive the influx of people moving in, bringing with them both life experience, spending, and service needs. These states saw real estate and utility markets inflated as a result of the influx of people leaving Florida, while also creating pressure on local infrastructure and public budgets. This is a domino phenomenon where a decision to migrate in Florida can impact many other areas. Florida is not completely out of hope. Several large businesses and famous brands are looking to retain residents and tourists. Disney, Hilton, and Marriott resorts offer long-term incentives to residents and snowbirds, including long-term rental discounts, service vouchers, and flexible entertainment packages. These measures are not only intended to increase short-term revenue, but are also an effort to maintain the long-term vitality of the community, keeping Florida's image as a reliable destination. However, recovery is not just an economic issue. It is also a cultural and emotional challenge. Florida has been remembered for its vibrant community spaces, fun beaches, and bustling outdoor events where the elderly can mingle, children can play, and local businesses thrive. Now, regaining these values requires rebuilding trust, a sense of welcome, and appropriate policies that help people live a long life with peace of mind. At the emotional level, middle-aged and elderly people will feel emptiness mixed with hope. Empty because of quiet streets and declining communities, but hope remains as some brands and local governments begin implementing practical support programs. This is an opportunity for Florida to reshape its image, from a luxury retirement paradise back to a place that both retains community values and ensures economic sustainability. Can Florida balance the cost of living, infrastructure, and appeal to return to being a living paradise for middle-class residents and visitors? Or will this be a lesson to warn other communities in the United States about the risk of imbalance between economic development and quality of life? Florida, with its empty streets, deserted beaches, and dormant buildings, is not only a geographical spectacle, but also a mirror of the anxiety and helplessness of generations who have seen America prosper. This is where the dream of retirement, once a symbol of peace and prosperity, now becomes a lesson in the cost of living, infrastructure services, and community values. Leaving families, snowbirds, and international tourists turning away, businesses struggling to stay, all create an emptiness not only of material things, but also of emotions, of faith in a peaceful life. The image of Florida is now a mixture of regret for the past, helplessness for the present, and hope if change is made. Big brands such as Disney, Hilton, Marriott have begun implementing long-term incentive programs, residential care services, and local economic support. This is proof that even in a crisis, opportunities for rebirth and recovery exist. But whether these efforts will be enough for Florida to return to the way it was, or just temporarily, remains an open question for all of us. If a once peaceful retirement paradise like Florida now faces emptiness and migration, could the community you live in fall into the same situation? Are we prepared to preserve value, trust, and quality of life for the next generation? If you've seen similar changes where you live, or have memories of Florida before, share your feelings and experiences in the comments section. Your story can help people see valuable lessons from reality. The content in this video is compiled from public data, reports, statistics, and citizen experiences with the aim of analyzing, exploring, and reflecting on the situation in Florida. Any information that has not been fully verified is presented in an overview or hypothetical form, not to attribute responsibility to any individual, organization, or government. Shared stories, experiences, and figures that evoke awareness, emotions, and reflection on social issues, economics, rather than investment advice, legal, or action guidance. Every personal decision about travel, retirement, real estate investment, or living choice should be carefully considered and consulted with a reliable source. The video does not promote any negative, controversial, or discriminatory behavior. All images, icons, and data are intended solely to explain the phenomenon, illustrate the impact, and compare the past, present. See this as an open conversation, an opportunity for us to see reality, learn lessons, and share perspectives, instead of looking for who is right, who is wrong,